Every 2 minutes, someone is sexually violated in the United States. Out of every 6 women, 1 has experienced an attempted rape or complete rape. Rape, we're told, is not about sex, it's about power. That power reveals itself through force that is visibly apparent and physical. But that same power, that same force, can also be unseen, coercive, and psychological. The story about this invisible power is a story we don't expect to hear. In this insider-exclusive Justice in America Network TV special, our news team visits with Jennifer Bandlow, attorney at the Cochran Firm in Los Angeles, California, and her client, Delaney Henderson, to go behind the headlines to see how Jennifer successfully represented Delaney to get justice, and to witness firsthand Delaney's powerful transition from victim to survivor and advocate as an ambassador for the PAVE organization, a national grassroots nonprofit working to shatter the silence and prevent sexual violence through social advocacy, education, and survivor support. She is also an ambassador of Bullies Reality, a nonprofit working tirelessly to stop bullying in every corner of every town, city, state, and the nation. Delaney has traveled the country sharing her story, educating others, and inspiring victims and their families on what victim empowerment truly means, and in turn, changing lives forever. Delaney's inspiring charisma, passion, and energy are coupled with her dedication to shattering the silence of sexual assault and giving a powerful voice to victims and their families. Audiences across the country have benefited from her experiences and her ability to turn her tragedy into triumph. She is here today because she inspires others to learn that every test in our life makes us bitter or better. Every problem comes to break us or make us. The choice is ours, whether we become victim or victor. And here is Delaney Henderson.
My parents usually call me the champion of the underdog because ever since I was a little kid, I would always stand up for everyone, stand up for people that I saw, being bullied, or people that I saw had a harder time than other students with something specific happening in school. For anyone who's ever been through anything traumatic, any experience that has impacted them in a way that has changed their entire lives, especially relating to sexual assault. I understand firsthand what it's like to contemplate if it's worth it, if it's something that is worth living to the next day. I've tried to take my own life because I got to that moment where it was like, it just wasn't worth it to me anymore. I didn't see myself or a future outside of the present situation that I was in, and it was really hard for me to even think of a future at the time. I think I've always wanted to say that there's so many ways in which someone can help another person who's been through this that I don't even think most individuals realize. Educating ourselves and learning from this experience and knowing how to respond when someone confides in you and tells you what has happened to them can be the best tool that any person can hold. And it's not that difficult. It's just responding by listening and supporting and not questioning.
I know that we are not the weight of all our memories. I believe in the things that I am afraid to say. Hold on, 'cause I have been where you are before, and I have felt the pain of losing who you are, and I have died so many times, but I am still I believe that tomorrow is stronger than yesterday, and I believe that your head is the only thing in your way. I wish that
This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Los Angeles, California. It is my great pleasure to introduce Jennifer Bandlow to the show. Welcome to the show, Jennifer.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Tell our audience a little bit about what you do here at the Cochran Firm and kind of why you became a lawyer to begin with.
Well, so I've been with the Cochran Firm for over 10 years. And when I started out, I practiced in many different areas of the law. I then transitioned into sexual assault cases. I sort of fell into it and realized that I was very passionate about those types of cases, so much so that I have opened my own law firm, SoCal Justice Law Group.
Separately from here.
Separately from here, I'm transitioning out of the Cochran Firm and into SoCal Justice. And I have had a wonderful experience at the Cochran Firm. We have been the voice for so many people over the years who have not, would not be able to have a voice otherwise.
So that new firm will specialize in sexual assault type cases.
That will be the primary focus, yes.
Tell our audience a little bit about the case that we're here today to report on, Delaney Henderson. What are the facts of the case? And who is Delaney, by the way?
So Delaney is such a sweetheart. And when I met her, she was very, very young. She was actually sexually assaulted by two boys right after she turned 16 years old.
Right.
And so the case that we brought was mainly against the school, the high school.
And the name of the school was what?
It was St. Joseph's High School.
Right here in Los Angeles, isn't it?
No, it was actually up in Santa Maria.
Santa Maria, okay.
The sexual assault occurred over the summer. So the high school was not responsible for the sexual assault, and we didn't sue them for that. But the lawsuit involved the conduct after she went back to the high school.
Okay.
She was severely bullied by various individuals.
Yeah. You know, I'm going to interrupt you here because I was kind of shocked at this because basically she got invited to a party of a very popular, couple of popular, I don't know, football players or something like that. They were the it people, right? And she wasn't amongst that crowd. And when she went there, you know, they gave her some alcohol. She's only 16. But I understand that possibly there were drugs in that alcohol too, right? And it knocked her out, right?
Well, there were some drugs, whether they were in the alcohol or out of the alcohol.
So she passed out basically, and while she was passed out, she was sexually assaulted by two individuals, correct?
Right, and this actually happened in her home.
Yeah. Now, when you say you brought the suit against the school, because this did not happen on school property.
Right.
Why did you bring the suit against the school?
Well, the school we felt liable for the conduct when Delaney went back to school. She was severely bullied.
Yeah, and when we talk about bullied, I saw some of the text where it's just amazing that her peers were calling her a slut, were calling her a whore, that she was a rat fink, you know, a liar, just because the guy that she accused was a popular guy.
Right. And
it's unfortunate because you see many, many cases, you know, all around the country where this sometimes drives people, young ladies, to suicide.
Correct. And she did attempt suicide. It got so bad. And the case against the school was brought because we alleged that the school had knowledge that she was terrified of these boys and that she had made allegations that they had sexually assaulted her. Yeah. There was an issue with the police, whether her parents had gone to the police and the police never came out to take a report.
Why is that?
You know, I'm not sure, Steve. I really don't know. At the time, I do know that Delaney was terrified to report this because she was afraid of the aftermath, and she wound up experiencing the aftermath anyway.
Well, also, wasn't she afraid that her parents would find out, and she didn't really want them to find out?
Well, they did find out. They were the first people who found out after that summer.
But she never could have imagined the response that she got from some of her peers,
Right.
That was so damaging, right?
She was actually told by her, by a mental health professional that she had to move out of the town. It was so bad, she wasn't safe.
And did she?
Yes.
Yeah.
She ultimately did. She finished her senior year in another town, and her parents weren't able to accompany her. So
talk to us about the lawsuit. You sued the school.
Right.
The rape happened off the school premises. So why are you suing the school?
For their failure to protect her. It was a negligence case. The first day back, her parents, and it was within the first week anyway, her parents and Delaney went into the school and said, look, this happened over summer. She's terrified to be here. She's terrified of the boys that did this to her. And what can we do? The school encouraged her to report to the police, but she was terrified, and her parents had already gone to the police. So it wasn't ultimately, it was reported to the police, but no report was taken because the police never followed up. And so Delaney experienced bullying, harassment on a daily basis. She would come to the school crying, and they would, our allegations were that they would claim to protect her, but allowing a survivor of sexual assault to sit in a room by herself and cry while the bullies are allowed to have free reign in the school is not protection.
Okay, so I understand that 2 of the school officials were fired from their job for...
Well, they were convicted by a criminal jury for failing to report.
Why didn't they report it? They want to protect the school?
Well, there are different theories on that. One of the theories espoused by the school was that, hey, look, we told her to report to the police. They said that they did go to the police.
Yeah.
The police didn't follow up, so...
Why should we report?
Right, but that doesn't absolve
But they're
them.
required by law to do that.
Right, and another of the allegations that we made was that later on in that school year, the older boy, really popular boy, he sexually assaulted another girl.
14-year-old.
14.
And that gave Delaney the inspiration to really grab hold of this and become an advocate, right?
Correct, yeah.
In the process of before she got there, she even attempted suicide too, didn't she?
Right.
This is very damaging. You hear about it all the time, I understand now that, what was the outcome of the case, by the way? You settled it, correct?
So we settled it out of court.
Okay. I understand that Delaney now has become a very active speaker on behalf of an organization. It's PAVE, is that correct? Promoting Awareness, Victim Empowerment.
Yes, absolutely.
And she goes around and tries to inspire other children or young women who have been victimized like her to stand up for your rights, correct?
Right, correct. Other survivors of sexual assault.
Well, congratulations on the success of settling the case. And we have Delaney with us right now. So let's bring her on.
Okay, sounds great.
It's my great pleasure to introduce Delaney Henderson to the show. Welcome to the show, Delaney.
Thank you.
I want to thank you very much for coming here today. And I got to tell you, I admire you. You've gone through a lot, as we've seen in the show. Give us a quick picture of what your life was like before that terrible incident.
It's hard to honestly remember till probably very recently. I couldn't really remember a lot of before this happened because it was such a significant impact in my life. But the parts of myself that I do remember, I was so happy and naive and just I had such a great life, such a great family, and I was always grateful for that. But I never really truly realized how much I didn't cherish it at the time of having everything be so simple and, not dramatic all the time, and not constantly being afraid, and not constantly being like preparing for something else. I was on every sports team, I was a cheerleader my freshman year. I played on softball. I played softball for so many years. I'd originally actually planned to play in college. So I was, really working hard for that for a long time. But overall, I was just a happy kid.
You thought life was perfect.
Yeah. I thought everyone had good intentions. That's what I thought. I had thought everybody was really just that the evil people would be so blatantly obvious that it was a bad person, and that, the closest people to me were all good people. There was no ill intentions ever. There was no reason for it.
As best you remember it, when you first realized that you had been violated, what were your thoughts?
It took me a long time to realize it. I think I knew it was wrong, but I didn't have a word for it. I couldn't express how bad it felt, just the emotions that was going through my head. In the months after, I didn't know who to tell, because again, I didn't even know what to tell them. But I knew in my heart that something was wrong, that something had changed inside me. Something was very different after that night. And it took me a long time to realize, what it was that even occurred. And even sometimes now I catch myself like, just kind of avoiding it and not really saying the right words. And it actually took me about 4 years to say the word rape. I would always say sexually assaulted, which it's, that's a very broad definition of it, but it took me a long time. And I think the first time that I actually started saying it and embracing it, and to the point where it was like I wasn't afraid of the word anymore, I wasn't afraid of the situation anymore, I finally felt empowered in a way.
Once you came forward and said what happened to you, I'll bet you were really surprised at what some of your schoolmates started doing to you, because that was re-victimizing you, wasn't it? Tell our audience a little bit about that.
The first person that I actually told was my best friend at the time, and she responded with basically blaming me, telling me that she couldn't believe I was going down this path, that I was hanging out with the wrong people, that I was allowing...
Basically, you caused it.
Yeah, and that it was my fault for allowing this situation to occur. And following that, that's exactly what I believed. If my best friend's telling me that, of course that this is...
Now, you also had some other people in the school who were calling you all sorts of horrible names, also basically saying, how can you do this to the most popular guy in school, right?
Yeah.
And that must have drove you, it drove you to the point of almost wanting to commit suicide, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Was there anybody that you felt you could talk to, your mom, your dad, or what?
No, there was...
What helped you? What stopped you from...
I mean, the first people that found out was my parents, and it wasn't because I told them. They heard through the grapevine just that something had occurred, and they confronted me with it, and that's when I broke down and told them what had happened. After that, we went to the school, and after we went to the school, people knew there was something that was going on. So, high school kids, they investigate and they try to, pinpoint it exactly what has occurred. So rumors started going, and ultimately every single person that I knew
Knew what happened
and chose to either stay quiet, stay silent, and kind of just back away from me slowly, or join the team against me.
Condemn you.
Yeah, it was a lot easier for anybody to be silent or to join the people opposing me. So that was harder than any situation I've ever been in my life. I never expected that to happen.
This whole experience, going to the lawsuit, how has this changed your life? How did it change you as a person?
I'm a completely different person than I was when I was a kid. And sometimes that makes me really sad, just because at the time when I was a kid and I had no idea there was such evil in the world, there was such hatred in the world, and people could turn their backs overnight. I lived such a simple life, and now knowing what I know now and experiencing what I know now, even the best people, the people that you think, have your back to the end, I have a hard time trusting. And I've realized, a lot of people would rather protect themselves than, anything else. And that has been really hard to understand.
Yeah, when you heard and found out that another girl, 14 years old, and you were 16 at the time you were raped, but another girl, 14, had been raped by the same rapist, right? That inspired you to do something.
Yeah. That's the hardest part for me to talk about.
Take your time.
Sorry. Yeah, so after I told the school, that 8 months later, it happened to another girl who was 14. And the guilt I felt because of that, I think the guilt that I felt from that situation, from finding out that it had happened to her, is what led me to ultimately say no more. I'm done. I'm not going to let these people, I'm already at the lowest point. I'm not going to watch this. And in my mind, she was a baby. She was a kid because she was, so young, and she looked so young. So I remember, my first conversation with her, I was like, what are we going to do? We have to do something. I can't sit here knowing what I know now and let these people change my life and then change potentially however many other lives that they're going to change and ruin and hurt people. And it's never going to stop until somebody stands up against them. And that's when we both decided to go to the police.
Now, you've gone much farther than that, and you now speak nationally, don't you? And you help people from all over the country, correct? Tell our audience a little bit about what you're involved with today and how this horrible set of events inspired you to go help other people, and what group you're working with now.
Yeah. Well, when I was 17, a national nonprofit reached out to me, and at first I was very standoffish because everyone had turned their backs on me at that point. I was alone. I was 100 miles away from my family. I was going to high school, on my own, starting over fresh, and I didn't know who to trust or who to believe. But PAVE reached out to me, and
PAVE is who?
PAVE stands for Promoting Awareness Victim Empowerment, and it's a national nonprofit. We educate peers, we support survivors, we develop curriculum to implement into different high schools, K through 12, all over the nation. And I speak nationally. I do a lot of workshops, facilitation, and we create facilitation guides. We basically train others to educate on different topics relating to sexual violence. And being able to do that has been so rewarding because I've met so many other survivors that have reached out to me and been like, nobody else has believed me, nobody has supported me. Some of them say, my family turned my back on me. So being able to be that person for them and to be able to just tell them simply, it's gonna get better, and not give up, and you can change the world by telling your story, has been so rewarding and has changed my life.
This has expanded the universe of people that you know, including your lawyer here.
Yeah.
How has she supported you in your endeavor?
I tell her all the time, and she always laughs and shakes her head, but I mean, she came to me, and she came into my life at a time where I needed somebody, I needed help, and I was searching for people to help me. Not even, just legally, but just emotionally and mentally, and she did all of that. And so when I, finally had the chance to meet her and for her to sit down and just explain to me what the procedure was, and me to be able to make the decision to file a lawsuit, I felt like I had a champion, somebody that was kind of rallying in my corner, somebody who would, be able to fight this battle with me instead of me just doing it all alone, because I had so many, court trials and testimonies I had to give and so many different legal battles, and I was doing it all by myself, and it was really hard for a long time.
You were so young.
And I was so young, and so it was the first moment that I was like, wow, this is somebody that's really going to go to battle for me, and she has so many battles.
Well, I admire you very much, and I'm glad you took the time to be on the show, because you got a message that everybody needs to hear.
Thank you.
I want to thank you.
Thank you so much.
So let's talk about, like your new law firm and the mission that you have, but more importantly, about some of the frequently asked questions that a lot of people usually have. What is sexual violence?
So sexual violence can be anything from, well, different people interpret the term violence differently. I've had cases where people are inappropriately touched, or they're severely sexually harassed, asked out daily, told their breasts look beautiful that day, or, love what you're wearing. And people use expletives. So there's so many degrees of sexual harassment and sexual assault. It's not, you never see the same thing twice, but the common theme is typically someone asserting their power in a relationship, whether it's boss on an employee, supervisor on an employee, teacher on student, and in the case of Delaney, the most popular boy against Delaney, a younger girl in the school.
Yeah. You hear and see so many more cases of sexual assaults, inappropriate touching, that sort of thing today, especially with the Me Too movement, okay? I would like your comment about the fact that I kind of believe that human nature really hasn't changed. You used to have a lot of that before, but it was never brought out. And women now are standing up for their rights and saying, hey, that isn't right. I don't like it. Don't do it.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. Well, thank goodness for the Me Too movement, because it's brought so much more awareness to the topic. Just even a few years ago, if a person came out and said, I was sexually assaulted, typically the first question that they would get is, well, what were you wearing? What did you do?
Right.
Were you drinking? Right. And yet, if you were in a car accident and your head was smashed, the first question would be, are you okay?
Yeah.
Not, did you run that red light and is this your fault? And if it is, we're just going to walk away.
So when a victim comes to you, when a person comes to you and say, I was victimized, I was assaulted, I was raped, okay? Other than legal action that you can take, you seem very much involved with this whole area of the law. What do you do to help a survivor?
Well, that's just it, the difference between victim and survivor. My belief is that anyone who's been through a sexual assault is a survivor, because they go through all kinds of self-blame, self-hatred, shame. Why did this happen? It must be my fault. And all of that is incorrect. So the first thing I do is try to have a conversation where I let them know, look, this is not your fault. You didn't walk around asking for this. I don't care what you were wearing, and I don't care what you were doing. Nobody wants to be raped or sexually victimized. So, and again, thanks to the hashtag #MeToo movement, it used to be in these cases, the defense would really bully the survivor and victim shame, if you will. And now there's a little bit less of that.
Yeah. Why are you so much involved with this type of practice? What personal history do you bring to this?
Well, I have a lot of passion for people who have experienced this type of power dynamic, inequality, inequity, and it is inherently unfair, in my view, for someone to be able to, just because they're your boss or just because they're your teacher or someone in a position of authority, they should not be able to wield that authority in such an inappropriate, horrible manner, because the person who is the survivor doesn't know what to do, right? Your job is on the line. You can't lose your job. And so a lot of times they don't know what to do, and that's such an unfair dynamic, in my opinion.
So let's talk about just one general question. If a person feels, if a woman or a man feels that they have been sexually assaulted or harassed or whatever, walk me through the steps of what they should do.
Well,
First and foremost.
it definitely depends on the scenario,
Yeah.
right? So if you're sexually assaulted, raped, you should call the police.
Okay.
If you are at your job and you're experiencing inappropriate remarks, inappropriate touching, what we would call sexual harassment, you should go through the reporting channels at your job.
Oftentimes there's retaliation.
You are correct. Oftentimes there is. So that is, it makes it especially important to document what you've reported and to whom and what the response was.
I want to thank you very much for doing what you do, because there needs to be more advocates like you, listening to what really happened to women and men and advocating for them. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Steve. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.